is advised.
Woe unto thee, O Israel! You have sinned a great sin in the sight of God. You are not worthy to receive these 10 commandments.
It was like a son to me that he was dead.
Deana Laney said the first time God wanted her to kill her sons came the day before the slayings, as her youngest boy played with a toy spear near a wood-burning stove. I said, "Boy, what are you doing over there?" And he turned around and he had a spear in his hand, Laney said. It was then that I knew I was going to have to kill my boys. She said she also saw Aaron holding a rock and then squeezing a frog. She said she believed God was suggesting she either stab, stone, or strangle her children. At first she said she rejected God's signs, putting the spear away and throwing the rock and the frog out in the backyard. I was telling him no, and each time it was getting worse and worse, the way that it had to be done, Laney said, explaining that God communicated with her through overwhelming sensations. I thought it was the Lord saying to me, "You're just going to have to step out in faith. This is faith. You can't see why. You just got to." Laney said she received the sign that she would use a rock and pleaded for guidance. Why? What purpose? What rock? What rock? She said. She asked God. Laney said she tripped on a rock in the yard and knew that was the weapon. She took it inside and tried to hit the baby with it and couldn't. I didn't cry, she remembered. There was no crying. It was like I had been given instruction and it was a matter of disobeying or obeying. Laney said she went to sleep that night not knowing when God would call her again. Well, God came a-calling that night at 11:30 p.m. on May 9th. Deana Laney woke up suddenly. God said, "Now this is the time." She said she went to Aaron's room and bludgeoned his skull with a rock she had hidden under his crib, but he wouldn't quit breathing. When he began crying, Laney's husband woke up and found his wife standing over the baby. "Everything's okay," she told him. He assumed his wife was changing a diaper and went back to bed. Laney then struck the baby again, and after hearing a gurgling sound from the blood in Aaron's throat, she covered him with a pillow and left the room. I told the Lord, "You're just going to have to do the rest. I can't do anymore." She then woke up Luke and led him out of the family's brick home in New Chapel, Texas, about 100 miles southeast of Dallas, and asked him to put his head on a large rock. The child's skull was smashed and hammered with a large landscaping rock, which Laney then pressed on his chest until he stopped breathing. Then she dragged him by his feet across the yard and hid him behind the swing so that Joshua wouldn't see him. Laney later said in a police interview she remembered how Yates' oldest son struggled and didn't want Joshua to do the same thing if he saw Luke's body. She then placed the rock back onto his chest and said, "Lord, I can't do it any longer." Laney said she looked up into the sky and there was a streak of lightning that came down, and that was the sign that he was dead. Joshua was next. Laney said Joshua asked as she led him outside, "Mommy, what are we doing?" "This is a test," she told him. Joshua obeyed when his mother told him to put his head against a large rock in the yard. But after Laney leveled a 16-pound rock onto the 8-year-old's head, he struggled to get away. Laney placed her knees on top of his arms and beat him again, until she thought he was dead, and then placed the rock on his chest. I thought this was a test. That's what all this was, is a test. Laney, who interprets the Bible literally like all other Pentecostals, had a close relationship with her family and her pastor. But she said she told no one about God's orders because she was following a passage in the Bible about Mary pondering only in her heart what the Lord had told her to do. She then called 911. Deana Laney was charged with capital murder and serious injury to a child. Laney, who was a 39-year-old stay-at-home mother who homeschooled her children, also had 14 Bibles in her living room alone. Laney pleaded innocent by reason of insanity. Jurors in her trial were shown the crime scene video taken by police. It showed the two boys with their skulls smashed, lying in a yard where garden signs read, "Love grows here, and thank God for mothers." The video showed the boys laying in their underwear with heavy rocks on their chests. Inside the house, the video showed a large spot of blood in the baby's bed, where Laney severely injured her youngest son. To show the severity of the attack on Joshua, Matt Bingham hammered a 16-pound rock into the floor of the courtroom 8 times. Vibrations could be felt throughout the courthouse. Laney sunk her head during the testimony and wept as graphic autopsy photos were shown to the jury of 8 men and 4 women. Her husband, who supported her, shifted in his seat a few rows behind them and often sighed deeply and lowered his head. All the psychiatric experts consulted in the case, including 2 for the defense, 2 for the prosecution, and 1 for the judge, said Laney was legally insane during the killings. Laney's case had many parallels with that of Andrea Yates. Both women lived in Texas, homeschooled their children. Both were deeply religious. Both felt they had no choice but to do what they did to their children. Both called 911. and both had some of the same psychiatrists assessing their states of minds for their trials. 5 experts came into the case for Laney, including Dr. Philip Resnick, who had served on Andrea Yates' defense team, and Dr. Park Dietz, who was hired by the prosecutor. But Laney's 2004 trial unfolded quite differently. While the defense psychiatrist had no trouble testifying that Laney had been delusional and psychotic at the time of the crime, and could not appreciate that what she was doing was wrong, the surprise came with the prosecution's expert, Dr. Park Dietz. He had been instrumental in convincing a jury that despite her terrible history of mental illness, Andrea Yates had known that what she was doing was wrong and thus she was sane when she murdered her children. In the Laney case, he surprised everyone by saying the opposite. From his assessment, he decided that Laney did not know what she was doing was wrong. She believed she was following God's orders. She admitted that she might have been aware that what she had done was illegal, but she was not thinking about that. She believed that she and Andrea Yates, who also started with the youngest, was chosen by God and would be together as the only witnesses when the world came to an end. Deana Laney was found not guilty by reason of insanity. Laney broke into tears as the verdict was read. Her husband, Keith Laney, sat solemnly with his head down. A few jurors cried and struggled to maintain their composure. Deana Laney was sent to a Texas mental hospital and was released in 2012.
Welcome to my channel. This is Mr. Scary. Hope you enjoy the show.